The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome back to another week on The Brandon Peters Show. Today we are here to discuss the 2003 film How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And returning to the show to discuss the film, author and incredible human, Greg McGoon.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. I'm excited.
Not a problem. So if you're a regular listener, you're probably like, where's my episode on the 1977 Turkish film, The Girl with the Red Scarf? Just let you know, it's on the way. It's just had a little bit of delay. So you're getting like a bonus right here. Something that was going to happen later is happening now. So welcome back, Greg.
Hello. Yep. Glad to be back. Excited to do this movie. It was almost the movie we were going to do the first time, but I went with a little bit more unconventional, and now we're going for the rom-com.
Yep.
Because I love rom-coms.
When you mentioned it, I perked up. I don't know if you would have expected me to perk up with like, oh my gosh,
No.
we have to do that one. We were doing that one. But you've been doing good. Are you vaccinated?
I am fully vaccinated, so that's been good. But the idea of like emerging into the world again and having like social gatherings is a little like jarring for me, because I don't know how to make small talk anymore. Like, if you give me a topic or ask me specific questions, it'll be great. But the general, like, how you doing? It's been so long. I'm like, yeah, no shit. It's been long for everybody. So it's a little overwhelming to be put in these positions of like, oh, I can't really make excuses anymore about like not getting together. So here we are. Good to see you after a year and a half, and for many people longer than that, because the year and a half was really just an extended version of like the already year I didn't see people before that. So it's tough, but I have like my first kind of friend of mine moved from New York to California like at the beginning of COVID. So she hasn't seen anybody yet being in California. And she's having like a small like 10 people beach gathering this Sunday. So I'm going to branch out and actually attempt to do that. Everybody's vaccinated for that. So so that'll be my first kind of actually like socializing with people more than like my boyfriend and like two friends. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Best of luck at that. There are some people I would like to hang out with again, but I don't think they're going to be the ones that are like, yeah, let's do stuff. They'll probably be like me and be like, oh, I don't know.
Oh, and I did go to Six Flags Magic Mountain this past weekend, because in California, if you're in California, they have annual passes monthly for $7.95, and there is no catch,
Really?
Unlimited visits, $7.95 right now, and that's like the cheap one. You can get one for like $10 and have a bunch of like 20% discounts on everything, and it's free parking included. Like, I'm not even like, we tried it out. $7.95, like for the price of going, which is less than going to one movie a month. You can go to Six Flags for as many times as you want in a month.
Wow.
So, I mean, I'm about 25 miles from it. So like a half-hour drive, not too bad to go. And like having a pass, you can just go for a couple hours and not feel like you're not getting your money's worth, which is good because of my dog. And as we know from one of my books, he's diabetic, so I have to keep him on routine. So I don't feel bad going away for like 3-4 hours to Six Flags, ride a roller coaster, come back. So yeah, $7.95 for a full year monthly. And that's basically a Netflix subscription, but for like real life activity.
Yeah, a real thrill ride. You might describe Stranger Things as that, but you're getting the real physical thrill ride of that. And yeah, the show is sponsored by Six Flags Magic Mountain. So $7.99. That's great. I've just been going to like the movie theater. That's my like.
I went to the movies for the first time. Actually, started to tear up a little bit just by being in, because movies are, I didn't realize how significant they were. And I know you do this too. I go to the movies by myself all the time. It's kind of like my place of Zen and meditation in a sense, because dark room by yourself, it's the one time I actively make an effort to turn off my phone. So I'm not even tempted to look at it. Right. And I can genuinely disconnect in a movie theater. And walking into a movie theater and just sitting there alone in the darkness was really relaxing and peaceful. And I actually felt recharged after doing it. But I saw Cruella during it. So at least it was a long one too for the first go. And I won't get into that, but I talked about it a little bit on Instagram, but I loved it. But we're not talking about that today. Nope. So.
Yeah, I felt that same way when I saw Tenet back in December at a private screening with just 9 people in a 70 millimeter IMAX. Like everybody got their own row and split, and like I was like, oh my gosh, I missed this. So when this came up, I didn't get to have what I saw. Seeing Spiral, I'm glad I didn't get emotional. Like was the one I went and saw. Like just to be like, woohoo, here we go. But I did have that rush of like, yes, I'm back. We're doing this. I was in my old AMC, so I was like, all right, cool. And I went back the next day, see A Quiet Place 2. But yeah, so theaters are back. And speaking of being in theaters, this is we're going back to 2003 today with How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
I'm doing an article on everything girls do wrong in relationships.
This Saturday.
Tonight, I'll hook a guy.
Hi.
Pull the switch. Delivery, Andy. I'm going to have this guy running for his life.
She'll have to choose between the perfect story.
Gang's all here.
Oh, no. And the perfect love.
Can I see you tomorrow?
He's really cute.
Are you calling me your girlfriend?
Yes.
Kate Hudson, Matthew McConaughey, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Look at you. You're beautiful.
Rated PG-13. Special sneak preview Saturday. Check local listings.
Is directed by Donald Petrie, which funny. There's going to be a lot this week of things that connect oddly to stuff on this show unintentionally. But Donald Petrie, he directed, and if you listened last week, if you listen to all my stuff, you listen to Old Teen Show, he directed the pilot episode of The Heights, which here I am discussing his film. I recorded that Heights episode about 3 weeks ago. So I had no idea this was coming up and these were going to connect, and I didn't even think about it when I was recording that. Oh yeah, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. He also, not to rehash if you listen to that again, but he directed Mystic Pizza, Grumpy Old Men, Miss Congeniality, Just My Luck, and on TV he did MacGyver, Chicago Med, and Chicago PD, The Equalizer, LA Law, and Amazing Stories, that old Spielberg show. So, yeah, this oddly ching connects, and there's going to be a lot of activity, so stick with it all week. It's written by Kristen Buckley and Brian Regan, not the comedian, Burr Steers, and it's based on a comic book by Michelle Alexander and Jeannie Long. The movie stars Kate Hudson, Matthew McConaughey, Catherine Hahn, Baby Newworth, Annie Parise, Adam Goldberg, Thomas Lennon, and Michelle. It's about Benjamin Barry is an advertising executive and ladies' man who, to win a big campaign, bets that he can make a woman fall in love with him in 10 days. Unbeknownst to him, the woman selected is Andy Anderson, writer for women's magazine Composure, who is currently working on her latest experiment to begin dating a man and drive him away in 10 days. The writers of this, 2 of them, of the 3, their only other credit is 102 Dalmatians.
I was going to say that. I was like, what an odd thing that the only movie I've seen is like the remake of Cruella. And when I saw that these like writers, 2 of them wrote 102 Dalmatians, not even the first one, but the sequel to the first live action.
This other guy, Steers, he was the writer-director of Igby Goes Down, which is a neat little indie film that was big right around when it came out, and just I don't think it has one of the Culkin kids in it. He also wrote and directed Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. He's directed The L Word, Big Love, 17 Again, Charlie St. Cloud, and as an actor, he was in the horror movie Intruder from '89, which had Bruce Campbell, all the Raimis in it, kind of a cool thing. And then he was in Silk Stockings, Pulp Fiction, and Last Days of Disco. So, well-rounded individual.
Yeah.
But yeah, the movie came out in 2003, originally supposed to be Gwyneth Paltrow and Mike Newell directing, who did 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Mona Lisa Smile, Pushing Tin, Donnie Brasco, but that did not happen. So
no, and this is one and that I love Gwyneth Paltrow. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think like I love her movies. I think she's a great actress in a lot of things that she does. I'm actually a super fan of a movie called Duets that most people don't even know about, which is very
You're
bizarre.
coming back for Duets.
Oh, I love that movie.
Oh my gosh.
So bizarre, and like her relationship with her like estranged father. Like it just
What is this,
you're, like, a lot of,
karaoke?
like, yeah. Love that. Like, so I love her. Country Strong. I think she can do it. But like Kate Hudson is this movie for me. And I didn't realize, like, the minute we confirmed doing this movie, I immediately just started writing down notes and just quotes from this movie. I have this movie memorized, but not only do I have it memorized, I didn't realize the significant impact it had, like defining my later character, because the mannerisms and the gestures that she does throughout the movie, I've organically kind of incorporated into my life without even realizing. And I'm like subconsciously actually referencing this movie on a daily basis, just from when she's in her pitch meeting, just to like the way she thinks, where she's like, I'm thinking about things, and just the way she kind of moves, and like, and I'll just do kind of silly things when I want to be kind of outlandish, or I'm so thirsty. Like it's almost kind of which Schitt's Creek, which I love. Alexis has some of those like traits that Kate Hudson did in 2003 with the kind of that, ooh, we're gonna do this, like it's so cute, and just that kind of quirkiness. I didn't realize how much of it I got from Kate Hudson in this movie. And I mean, moral of the story is Kate Hudson is a treasure, and she really got a lot of those comedic gifts, I think, from her mom and icon Goldie Hawn, who is just a treasure in her own right. And my Burning Man nickname is Goldie, because I go to not because of Goldie Hawn per se, because it's golden, but Goldie for short. But I do adore Goldie Hawn more than like anything. And it's just kind of fitting that I would fall into a nickname of Goldie, and I love Goldie Hawn, and Kate Hudson is her child. So, and I love this movie. Anyways, sorry for the tangent.
No, I can't. Like, I agree. She totally, like, I can't picture when you hear Paltrow. I'm like, does that work?
Well, that's the thing is Kate Hudson has like this ease and this kind of more exuberant energy, and there's something more playful about it. While Gwyneth Paltrow, although very good at comedy, has more of a dry sense of like a subtle, dry comedic tone. So there's. I think she can do it, and she's great in her rom-coms, but I don't know how she would sell the Mr. Sniffles line. But here's the thing, though, that I did read is a lot of these scenes were improvised. And Kate Hudson had a lot of freedom to improvise, and I don't think that is as strong of a suit as Gwyneth Paltrow. I could be wrong on that one, but I just think Kate Hudson took it and ran with it.
She made it nobody but her. Yeah.
And again, I'm talking just about her. This whole cast is phenomenal. And as I talked about in our other episode, it's a testament to these actors that they made this movie so delightful and charming in a premise that should not work by any stretch of the imagination. It's the most absurd concept ever for a movie, because in what universe are people actually sitting there complaining about their struggle to lose a guy? Like, it just the idea that this is something that women are unaware of, or even just like men are just like, oh, what am I like? I mean, I get that the premise is like kind of what women are doing wrong, but there's so many issues with just that concept too. Because you have Michelle, like this movie is like two parts where you kind of have like Andy Anderson pre-Benjamin Barry, and just their names alone through the alliteration, delightful. You have Andy kind of in her little like girl squad, and she's established to be kind of this ideal woman who is independent, career oriented, substantial, a girl's girl, but also can hang with the guy, loves sports, loves her basketball games. So she's kind of this idealized person, which is actually kind of uncommon for rom-coms too, where the entire movie, although about dating, isn't about dating. Like neither of them are motivated by connection or a relationship at all. And yet this movie kind of forces them into a situation that really is irrelevant to their daily lives. Like Ben's concerned about work and Andy's concerned about work. And it's kind of this flippant idea of like, look at Michelle over there just struggling with dating, and she's kind of that foil to Andy's kind of career motivated, like power woman vibe that they're giving off. And like Ben is just a narcissistic hotshot player where like you don't really see any sense, even when they start dating, that they're really concerned about relationships, which you typically see in a lot of rom-coms where there is this uneven power balance or just some form of dynamic that's set up where it's just like these two people kind of meet and it's supposed to be organic. Nothing about this movie is organic. It is fully contrived from the beginning setup, where even the camera angles and the cameraman is well aware of it, even in the bar with when Andy walks in and the Judys, your like villain, like kind of women are setting it up, and like the camera pans to her, it's like, that one, and she's like, shh, and she does that little whisper, like close up, like, we get it, like we know what you're doing, like any more arrows pointing.
They are almost like animated villain Disney cats. Like
that's yeah.
It's crazy with those two. Look, yeah, but
and it plays into that.
Yeah, no, you're right with all the weirdest. Like all the dates are things, stuff, stereotypes, just nothing deep. Or it's lines he's playing, it's acts. They're both acting in a way that they see their own gender stereotyped almost, and
so that's what makes it basically a romantic farce. And I don't think, and that's why I think I appreciate this movie more, is because I think people want to take it more seriously or look at it from this notion of actually like dating and building a relationship. When I think the movie itself, despite like spoiler, they end up together. But I mean, that's in the freaking trailer. It really shows the final scene of them hugging in the trailer. But they're self-aware, and like based on like even the description of a farce, the use of deliberate absurdity or nonsense, satire, parody, and mockery of real life situations, people, events, and interactions, unlikely and humorous instances of miscommunication, ludicrous, improbable, and exaggerated characters and scenarios. I mean, that is this movie when it's tackling dating and just the improbable setup that the odds of these two characters, one who's forced to keep a guy and one who's forced to lose a guy, are now forced together for their own self-interest, is an unlikely, improbable situation. And right there you have like the setup for a great farce. And if you like romantic movies, look at it from that kind of angle and you go, okay, everybody's in on this joke except for the two, like you have the two teams playing against each other. They're not aware of it, but they're both like on their own joke and in their own little world. And I love that about this movie. It's just not maybe as physical as what people would consider like a farce to be, but there's still a lot of outlandish either expressions and gestures and just dialogue that plays into this kind of farce that develops based on how much kind of how unhinged she becomes throughout this movie, because she kind of goes too far, and we can talk about that too. So
right.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said about it. Like I wanted to point out, like this is on McConaughey's side, and this is a rom-com kind of thing in general. Dipping in again after Wedding Planner, that was like his first one. And then this is after he does Reign of Fire. And during this time, he's like, according, if you follow lore, there's the reconnaissance that comes. Basically means it's just showing that people are viewing rom-coms as some slumming genre that he's doing.
Yeah.
When he's acing romantic comedies at this time. He's a star. It's just, guess what? Bros ain't going to these movies, so therefore they don't count for some reason. And like, was there really a reconnaissance, or did he just slowly take a break from rom-coms? Like, I mean, like, because he's good in these movies. He's, not slouching. And during this time, he's doing other things. He did like Sahara. That was a big... People bitch about not having Indiana Jones movies because they should see that because it's actual practical things. It's a fun adventure and just costs too much.
Yeah.
And he's doing... I mean, he had that We Are Marshall movie trying to do something prestige or whatever, but he's still doing these things. It's just, Lincoln Lawyer comes and he's... I don't know, in a suit, spouting off some snappy lines, and here he is, he's back. And it's like he didn't leave, he just floated in a genre you weren't paying attention to him because straight males are all the writers and stuff at the time. They're not paying attention to him. They're not considering him as important. Like, if you take this movie, and this is why I'm pointing out this movie, you take it and you throw it way back, say black and white, Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn, all-time classic. It's brilliant. This is a masterpiece of cinema. This is a concept that would work way back then.
Yes.
And probably better because it can be silly, but that's what it is. But in a modern sense, it's slumming it. It's the chick flick marathon thing that they don't want to see, but like, it's what it is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, you nailed like a few things that I was thinking. It kind of, I mean, in 2003, I was in high school, so I can't really say if this works in terms of like how dating, like, or were bars that packed, did people as easily just go out and casually do it? But like in 2021, in this kind of, I don't think it would ever work, this idea of in like the era, like in this era of like habitual swiping and ghosting culture,
right,
which I don't think ghosting was really coined then, and swiping, smartphones weren't really a thing. So dating was a little different. But if you throw it back to the Cary Grant and all those times, dating was actually something where you met somebody and you didn't just disappear, because it was a little bit more of like more difficult because there were fewer opportunities, so to speak, to meet people. So when you did, you invested a little bit more time before you kind of went away. There was a courting process. There was just, things have shifted. It doesn't mean that today's
if ghosting would have happened back then, the police might have been called. Like, they're not in.
That's kind of true. Like, there was a thing where people could show up at somebody's house and it wouldn't be creepy, and yet now it's like, wait, you're coming without texting first? Like, there's just so many ways to communicate now that there wasn't, that I think something like this could kind of work. But here's the other thing that's hilarious about this movie: the amount of assumptions in this world that they create in this movie for it to even work before Ben and Andy even get together. Like, first, just quick side note to Bebe Neuwirth, who is just a gem and a stage icon and just tremendous no matter what. The way she delivers that line, the title line in the movie during that first pitch meeting of like, how to lose a guy in 10 days. Yes. Go. Like, it's just this spiritual revelation that like they came up with this brilliant guy. You're like, in what world? Like, again, I would look at her and being like, wait a second, I don't understand. So people don't understand how to lose a guy. What do you mean? Like, how does this work? So you're going to start dating a guy? Well, how are you going to meet a guy so quickly? Like, the idea that she can effortlessly meet a man right then, that day, and then guarantee a second date, and then guarantee that after that second date, he will call back. And then when she acts weird, the assumption that not only will he like call back, but he will give you an explanation for why he's behaving or disappearing. Because what's the article? She was needy, he didn't call. No article. Like, what exactly are you assuming you're going to get?
10 days in a row.
Who has time for that? Like, thankfully, I'm in a relationship right now. But when you go on dates, I've had many a second date during my dating days, and I've been on many a date. But like, second dates usually come within 5 days or so of the first one, even if it goes really well, and you just kind of communicate and talk during those things. Because schedules are hard to coordinate. There's so many factors that go into dating. That in what world are you free every night after meeting somebody?
This could work if you were at a university and a girl's working on a college paper, and that I could see that, because college is, well, we're stuck in this same little town,
agreed,
and have nothing to do but class. So you could do that. You could find someone. Let's work on this script, Greg. We're gonna redo How to Lose a Guy in 10 days.
I mean, that is actually, I didn't even think about that. Is the perfect scenario for this movie to work, is college setting, or like nowadays you probably set it in high school, because Netflix just loves a good complicated high school love story.
And if you set it in the 80s, they'll double your budget. So
true. Yeah. So, but you're right. Like, but in what world are two working professionals that available, and neither of them are like flagged by, wait a second, why are you around every night? Like, that would be already weird, because he like showers her with hundreds of roses like day 2, and in her mind she's like, great, I got him. of intense for your like second like day of meeting somebody. So there's just so many little factors that neither of them are actually aware of.
They do have a good A to B there. She has the Knicks tickets, which is that night, and he needs to get to that game that night. So, okay.
Yes.
You did it there, but then,
every other night. Like, it works that they do watch the games together. And like, again, this movie manages, the actors sell it. The movie, like everybody sells this scenario. Every time I watch it, and I rewatched it before this, even though I could recite the whole thing, like, you know how like movies do sing along, I could do an act along and just literally deliver every line of this movie while it's playing. But they sell it, and you believe them, and you go along on like each little episode of their journey together. You're like, what's she going to do next? But when you think about the time frame of which it's happening, it's just mind-blowing to me that this is like, oh, that's the fourth date. Wait, 4 dates? But who has the fact that neither of them are actually questioning the availability and just their overall time frame, to me.
I think the thing is they're so focused on each other's agenda that they're making it happen, and it just goes to degrees that are of absurdity, which is 1,000% intended for comedy. But I don't know if a modern audience in the OOs or even now can accept like everything's got to be so grounded and stuff. People don't laugh at absurdity as much anymore. But if this was, like I said, Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn, black and white, you're like, ha ha ha, look at she brought a dog already. They're going to counseling. But the escalation, I don't think, can be seen. Like, a lot of people don't like the absurd anymore. It's a shame, because absurd is funny, and that's where this is. But yeah, like that's part of it too. And the reason that they're more invested in either their agendas than they are each other, and that's why it's able to go to these extremes.
Which is kind of, in a weird, twisted way, refreshing for a rom-com, because even though there's a lot of, they're both kind of awful. The escalation that she behaves is so intrusive into his life that it's like borderline alarming, like contacting his mother without his consent, like getting a key to his apartment, getting him a dog, like that's a living creature that's not just like a gift. Like you see all those memes about like people and like, don't get a bunny for Easter because they're cute, because it's the lifetime. Like, don't get a guy you've known for 3 days a dog. Like it just, there's a lot of troubling like aspects to it. But again, a testament to Kate Hudson, who you go, you're charming and delightful, and I just want to be your best friend. So she makes me like, I would want that dog from her, but I would want to hang out with Crazy Andy every day, because she just was fun to me and just adorable. But it was so invasive into his life that's something that like couples would do after years of being together, of like having talks about like, should we get a dog? Like, are we going to meet family? She didn't know he had a weird history with his mother or his family. Like, there are some friends I had, if anybody tried that, it's like they're a strange parent. Like, that's just maybe opening wounds. But you accept it in this because it's packaged in a way that is glossy and shiny and fun. So you know the movie's intention is not to cause harm. Right. So we're going in there with this idea that it's not harmful, but the actual reality of it, it's a very harmful movie.
It's haunting. Like, what if somebody suffering from severe depression and just came out of it, she picked them? Or some personality disorder, or like a stalker, or like she's very open with who she is and everything. Like, only in a movie.
Only in a movie does it work. And again, these two actors. But that's the thing about this movie. And again, it looks like they're having fun. It's one of those movies you watch and you're like, I feel like everybody wants to be there. I feel like the director created an environment where, like he said, have fun with this. Like, enjoy yourselves. Like, you're meant to. What did BB Newirth say? She said something where it was like viciously like evil, or like unnecessarily vicious or something, when she was reading through the notes and she makes a quick reference telling somebody about how it's like needlessly vicious. I think that's what she said to the Judys about the article, or like to someone. But like, that's the point, is like everybody is like aware on both sides of how kind of cruel this is and taking pleasure out of it. So from that, you step out of it and you are allowed to watch this kind of fantasy rom-com farce, and not like you're supposed to with The Wedding Planner per se, which again, in The Wedding Planner, you're rooting for a marriage to break up, or like a pending marriage to break up, so he can get with the wedding planner. Like, there's a lot of inappropriate things there, but you're supposed to believe in The Wedding Planner it's more organic, and you feel their struggle. And this, it's just like, let's dig the knife in deeper and have fun with it. And in other scenarios, if you wrote this as a scenario, this could be a Lifetime movie, only and like an evil dark one. And I've been on a Lifetime movie kick. Don't get me started on that right now. All the Nightmare collections, if like for your listeners, if you have not seen A Wife's Nightmare, A Sister's Nightmare, A Brother's Nightmare, A Father's Nightmare. Wait, there's no brothers. And lots of nightmares. A Surrogacy Nightmare, just winning. Those movies win.
All right.
But back to this. But this movie has this idea of like, okay, I have to get rid of a guy who won't go away. That's a stalker movie. Like, there's something about it that's kind of, but again, their own self-interest is motivating this thing. And then the other issue, and again, I love this movie, so it's funny to look at it like this, because I'm not treating it as your kind of rom-com of this kind of this sweeping love story. I'm treating it as a comedy, romance second. And I think a lot of people go in treating it as a romance and a comedy second, if it's not your type of comedy. But
I mean, that's how they sell it, you know, but
it's a vicious kind of comedy with fun, great acting in it. And that's the thing, if people dismiss like rom-coms, like, oh, like if people who do rom-coms can't really act, I'm like, I've seen so many, and if they're not really well acted or well directed, they're not fun. Like, these people, that first encounter of Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey, the one word exchange, which has become kind of iconic, just people just kind of know it, where it's just like interested, perhaps, hungry, starving, just that one word exchange, or like analyzing each other. And it's just, they deliver that perfectly that you accept it. And yes, it's founded on this idea of this like intrigue attraction law, like principle of like, they're clearly both like hot and attractive. So there's already like, okay, guys standing, I need a guy, I need a woman, we're both attractive, let's just feel this out. And they don't need to really do any work on that. But it like the movie is kind of flawed because, okay, so let's say Andy does push the guy away. Let's say like it was somebody who wasn't Matthew McConaughey who had to keep her around. What would she like? What do you really learn from this article? Like, what is your outcome? Okay, he stopped calling after I did baby talk. Oh, he stopped calling after I said I was vegetarian. What do you really fully learn? And what does that prove to Michelle, who thinks that she's doing something wrong? And a lot of these movies kind of look at women in a way that it's their responsibility to cater to men. And Michelle wasn't like, she made mistakes, and Michelle wasn't really making mistakes. She was just maybe being too premature with some of her behavior, saying, I love you on a second date, crying during sex. Not, well, like saying I love you, not bad. On a second date, premature. Crying during sex, not necessarily bad if it's really romantic and intimate. It can happen. And if that's just something you do, then you want to find somebody who's comfortable with that. So to look at Michelle as problematic, or like her being the issue in these dating things, it's not so much how to lose a guy in 10 days. It's more of how to be more self-aware on a date. And that's where it just kind of loses you on this idea. That's again, BB Newirth just being like, it's such a genius idea. It's just, you don't have the ability to do it. I think she couldn't really start dating a guy. It's more if she needs to interview men and like maybe find what they say. Like that to me would have made a more effective article, is like, what do guys say are their kind of like no-nos, like don't call back, warning signs, red flags for them. And which is again catering to the man and not the woman. It's not like, how can a guy impress a woman? It's more of like, how can a woman guarantee a second date? How can they build a relationship? And in all these, and not this movie, the idea that people say they're in a relationship after 2 dates is absurdity to me. I don't know if that's a straight people thing or anybody, but I've not met any friends, or I've not heard from anybody where, I mean, if 2 dates constitutes like we were in a relationship or we were dating, then I've been in more relationships than I can count. But I would not say that. So I find it really funny that she was like, it was such a touching relationship after 5 days. Like that's not a thing. So you have to, but I appreciate in this movie, it puts a giant like flashlight on the 10-day mark. Like other movies, it's supposed to be like, we just fell in love in a weekend, like getaway. And it just was so unexpected. This movie is just like, haha, we're giving you 10 days to do it. So it kind of puts you at ease almost, because you're just like, you want that to happen rather than say, I can't believe they fell in love in 10 days. It's just like, oh my God, are they going to do it? Are they going to do it? You're excited for it because there is that timeline. When you're more dismissive in other movies that this happens, the same thing happens in such a short period of time, which again, isn't something we're seeing as common. And I think the reason why rom-coms are kind of dying out, as people say, or moving more towards like an indie format and not this kind of glowy, contrived scenario, is because people are recognizing that it's not natural. None of this is natural. And if you're going to try to put it in this natural setting, you need to either up the stakes, like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, or not do it. Or it's going to just kind of fall flat. And I think you're right. We can set this in college and remake it today, but I don't know if it would work as adults today. But then most rom-coms don't work today. So
I think if they give rom-coms a chance to explore different representation, I think, I mean, look at Crazy Rich Asians. That's rom-com that was huge in America. Because it's something we don't see every day, and it's new. It may be those same old tales, but people will go to those because, like, as you know, I not the case with all straight white males, but I like to see it because it's something I'm not familiar with. I can learn. It's unpredictable because it's taking a different culture, race, ethnicity, sexuality, all that stuff that I learn. I can see a new side of humor. I can see a new side of life, and that's exciting to me. Going to see two hot, straight white people get together, we have so much of that. So I think representation could be the key to bringing it back to success in the theater.
In terms of, I mean, we do still see those like kind of straight white couples all the time in rom-coms. They exist, but they've more now been kind of classified more for like made for TV, and like your Hallmarks, your Lifetimes, your Netflix now, where they exist. I think like Netflix is always, but they're not like these tentpole movies like they used to be back then, because I mean, you could sit there and list off The Wedding Planner, Made in Manhattan. Like you had J-Lo as a big rom-com star. You had Kate Hudson as a big rom-com star. You had these big tentpole, like genre, at least not movies, where now we've kind of shifted into like superhero romance stuff if they try to weave that in. But this idea of these kind of glossy rom-coms, I remember when a few years ago when Jennifer Lopez did that glossy rom-com. What's it called? It's on Netflix for free, like Netflix now. But I did see it in the theaters. Okay. It's going to drive me crazy. And I actually enjoyed it. Anyway, title's not important. Jennifer Lopez's rom-com from a few years ago, that was an attempt to bring back that kind of stylized, glossy rom-com with a slight twist, because they were like, she was old, like the characters were a little bit older and the relationship wasn't so defined by a man, and there were other little elements in there. So I think people are trying to do them, but I don't think there is as much as a clamoring for it as it is just kind of become Netflix background noise that people put on because you don't need to pay attention to know what's going to happen. And I think even though you don't need to know what's going to happen in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, the way they deliver the lines, the way they deliver each little like kind of outlandish scenario, you want to watch. You're not just waiting for them to get together because you just kind of want to watch how they're going to get out of this situation. Right. And it's fun. So this movie keeps you engaged. At least it keeps me engaged. And this blew my mind the other day when I was looking up this movie. Kate Hudson was 23 when she did this movie. Yeah. He was 33. She was 23 years old in this movie.
She feels late 20s, early 30s. She doesn't
Yeah,
look,
but I mean,
but
no.
yeah.
But that's the thing is like, I guess that's basically like, and I always call it like Scarlett Johansson syndrome of where you can play like 30 and like 16 in the same year. I mean, like Kate Hudson doesn't really have an age to me when I like watch her movies. It's hard for me to tell what age you're supposed to be. And the fact that she was as nuanced as she was in this movie, I mean, okay. And this is going to be a very, very bold claim, and no one can touch the person I'm about to reference in terms of comedy. Lucille Ball is one of the most comedic geniuses, but Kate Hudson has qualities that are reminiscent of Lucille Ball and her kind of slapstick, like kind of comedy, like I Love Lucy elements in this movie, of just her bigger gestures that Kate Hudson sells and you think come off as natural, just like Lucy does with everything she does. It felt natural. And I Love Lucy will always be my all-time favorite show. And I can tell you, I can talk about every episode, everything. Kate Hudson achieves a level of comedy and nuance in this movie that if you watch it carefully, you can see there's a lot going on in there that is beyond just delivering a line. And that's something that was so natural to Lucille Ball.
She's got little mannerisms in there too that I was enjoying too, that you won't catch on the first time, but you watch just a couple, you're like, oh, that was a nice touch there, what she did. Like I had one, I didn't write it down, but there was one little moment, I think when he made her dinner or something, there's some little move she made that I thought it was really irrelevant, but brilliant at the same time. And I can't recall what it is. So sorry, listeners, for that.
But there's so many though. Like that's the thing. Like when she tells them to put out the cigars and she does a little, and like that's something that like Lucy would have done. And I'm not saying Kate Hudson is Lucille Ball. I'm just saying that like the ease of comedy that like Lucy just kind of blew the lid open to in the world to, Kate Hudson is able to kind of almost generate some of that ease and natural like comedic humor that Lucille Ball actually had. So I wish Kate Hudson had more opportunities to do more of those comedies where I think because you saw how talented she was in Almost Famous, which wasn't really a comedy, but you just saw her just glow on screen, which allowed her to do this movie. But then her other romantic comedies weren't as strong, I don't think. I mean, I'm trying to think of if there's any, I mean, Something Borrowed, Bride Wars, they were all fun, charming, and delightful, but they just didn't quite have the level of play. And maybe that's because she was able to improvise more in this movie. Yeah. And if that's the thing, then Kate Hudson is really shockingly talented. If you look at what she can do, especially in an improvised setting, even just her voice inflection of the, like, a movie, my choice. And she like squeals and she's excited. And she's like, but Ben, I'm so thirsty. Just all those little elements that she does, it could have come across as either like bitchy or obnoxious. And even though it's kind of obnoxious, you just kind of want to like go, oh, but that's sweet. Like you don't think that there's bad will in her. You don't think there's anything
on-off
negative.
Switch is adorable. Like you see her being devious, but you're like, you know, like that's, she like, can you watch her turn it on and off? And it's natural. It's in character. There's a lot going on, but it's like fun, devious, respectful, and just, you enjoy it. You're like, seeing her change from person to person.
Absolutely. And then everybody kind of does that in this movie. This movie highlights it for her because she's on screen more. But Matthew McConaughey has all these little like, and I don't want to dismiss him in this because he's recognized now for all the drama that he does, but he was good as a rom-com guy and not like as a lot of men fall flat, but he had personality. He had character. His character may have been kind of shitty, but he had to play this in a way. Her character was good for him because you don't really know his character other than he's a hot shot, know-it-all, like level 10 mansplainer. Like he's telling these women, like, I know more about women than women do. Ha 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 ha. So it's kind of almost.
That's probably why they choose to show us his family and not like hers.
Well, and you also wonder, she probably doesn't have a strong relationship with her family because she's so emotional about it. So I think for him, it's almost like this movie almost would work too, as if there wasn't like a bet, but it was more of like this asshole guy who needs to be knocked down a peg and then just like finds a woman just to like kind of break him down and break down his barriers. Because again, she does cross the line with the key and the dog and the like those elements, but she has good, like, but she's still being sweet in some weird way. But he needed that kind of reality check to like be forced to put up with dating, because I think he is the guy to be dismissive of women. I mean, that's an assumption of just kind of the initial intro to him, that he's a player who would get rid of women. And this forced him to get to know a woman. Maybe she was putting on an act, but it put him in a scenario that he probably wouldn't get, and then be a lonely 40-something-year-old bachelor going like, what did I do with my life later on?
And we meet him trying to take a gig from two women at a place. And rather than they work together, and rather than work together or see how he could help them, he wants to just outright take it.
Yeah. So. And he's awful. But the thing is, like, he's gaslighting her by being genuinely sweet and compassionate and leading her on. But she doesn't even want that. So it's just kind of funny where he's being the ideal guy and she's like, why? And that's the thing is, the elevator, the poker night is genius. Like, that scene is so fun. And when they're all hanging out for poker and they're doing their thing, and then she overhears them talking about her being crazy, and she flips the whole platter of all the carrots and celery. And I'm a crazy person, what? And then she kind of almost has to take the initiative to be like, I'm giving you the breakup, like, just nod to it, and like storms out, because one of the most iconic lines in like the entire movie, that even if you don't know the movie, you know, like, our love fern, it died, you let it die. Like, everybody knows the love fern line. So the friends saw the crazy, and yet they encourage the couples counseling on day 6. Like, day 6 they're talking about counseling. But that elevator scene, when the elevator door closes, and like after he says, I'll call you tomorrow, let's do couples therapy, you like see her not be, why is he crazy, as much as, oh, I'm actually potentially hurting a real man here now, because she thinks that he's genuinely now invested in her. And it gets this weird, like, the subtle face that she gives where she's kind of starting to fall for him, not knowing it's an actor. It's a very twisted, it's almost like her punishment now for being so unhinged with him, that she's starting to catch feelings. And that's kind of a tricky line to play of like, is that even appropriate? Her catching genuine but really the true villain of this whole movie is not so much the Judys as it is Ben's boss. Ben's boss is the meanest, like, not the meanest, is the worst character, because he is complicit in this. And not only that, it's his subjective notion that he will declare whether or not this random woman loves this man. Like, he's like, I will decide on this day. He's a terrible man. Like, Ben is self-involved and he's motivated, trying to get ahead. The boss, what does he's willing to watch his own employee basically gaslight and humiliate a woman, not knowing the situation, because he thinks it's fun to like prove a point to get a job. Like, that's how he's going to conduct business. That's very inappropriate. Like, call HR. So right there, I'm just really like, the Judys, I understand. Like, that's like the catty, like, college friend. Like, I get it. He was being a douche to them. He tried to mansplain about like what women don't know. Give me a break. They're fine to me. They're kind of funny, and he kind of deserves it. But the boss, his own boss, being like, even at the parties, like, oh, good job, Ben. She loves you. And he's like, wait, what? She loves me? It's like, how is this okay? Like, that's where it really is. Just like, that's where it got me, and it like broke my heart. It was like, no. Like, even BB Newirth kind of started feeling bad. She thought it was fun until she realized, like, oh no, like, this got too far, and I should have seen the warning signs. And she didn't. Like, you can sense like remorse on his face. He's like, good job, man. You got your job. Like, you got it. And it's just like, oh, so really the worst character in this is the boss.
We have uncovered the true villain.
The true villain is the boss in this movie. Yeah, it's just, and I'm, again, and like, you get full farce with the singing at the end, just getting on stage and being, but again, the movie's self-aware. It's like tone deaf and drunk, not a good combination. the movie doesn't try to make you think that this is just a natural occurrence. The highlights every moment, like, do you see what we're doing? Wink, wink, wink. It wants you to know, and it lets you enjoy that. So you're not holding your breath. So just go in there just saying, oh, shit's about to go down. Have fun with it. They're having fun with it. As an audience, you can too. And everything that's going bad in this movie, just know that, like, they know it's bad. Like, every character, except for the boss, knows it's bad.
Yeah.
So you can't criticize the movie for behaving badly when the movie is telling you we're behaving badly.
Well, yeah, and I have to say, like, too, we haven't brought up much at all, but, like, the supporting players here, like, especially, like, Thomas Lennon and Catherine Hahn, really take this up many notches. I mean, those two are, like, veteran rom-com plants. Like, oh, let's stick them in there. They'll improve your movie. And, yes, Marvel people, Catherine Hahn existed before WandaVision and has been great ever since Landing. So I'm glad everybody discovered her this year, but... Or was it? Yeah, this year. But
this year.
She's been around. Just watch other things. You'll see her. But they are hilarious, both of them.
Like, I was like a Catherine Hahn growing up. Like, in terms of like dating wise, I would just be like, oh my god, second date, I really liked it. What happened? Like, I saw myself more in her than I did in Andy. But then, like, Andy is, like, again, this idealized kind of like woman who's strong. And it's funny, like, as I was describing her, I was like, oh my god, she's like my friend Danielle, who you've interviewed on the show. She's a writer who, like, got substance and is a girl's girl, but, like, loves the sporting games, like a Mets super fan. So she's kind of got all these qualities of Andy. And I'm like, well, that's not me. I'm like Michelle crying over somebody I like met after like 2 dates.
You're not a real therapist, are you?
No, I wish. But she's genius, and she's a brilliant stage actress too. I saw her 5 times on Broadway in Boeing. So I love, like, Catherine Hahn became really one of my favorite people after this movie, and I followed her career very heavily after that. And again, saw her on Broadway multiple times because I was like, I love her. So I like I did like something on Instagram where it was like, I'm glad people finally realized that Catherine Hahn, like the Renaissance or the Catherine Renaissance or something that they were calling it. So, like, that's what I think I saw, like, a news article just like now because of the TV show Hacks. They're calling it like the Jean Smartissance or something, like this Renaissance of Jean Smart. So, like, certain actresses are getting, like, recognized later on in life. Catherine Hahn was a star in that movie, going toe to toe with Kate Hudson in the few scenes that she was in and delivered. And even Annie Paris, is that how you pronounce it? I think so. I saw off Broadway in a show. I've seen her on stage, who's a very talented actress. And then you have the Judys, who, I mean, Michelle, she's worked consistently all the way through. Till like now. So this, and again, B.B. Newirth, everybody knows, and the 2 friends of Matthew McConaughey, all of them are very much
Adam
like
Goldberg,
steady working actors. So this movie picked out people who just meshed really well together. And I just love the characters in this movie, and I love how, like, awful they are. But they realize that they're being awful, and then they come to terms with it. And even the contrived, like, we're going to play bullshit just so that we can call bullshit at the end. It's just funny to me that this movie, it takes every, like, romantic comedy trope and kind of slaps it in the face. It slaps it in your face, and then it, like, kind of slaps that away from your face. Like, it just kind of, it puts a spotlight on it, saying, so you see what we're doing here, and then kind of just, like, blows it up.
Even to the point of the movie ends on the way to the airport before they get there, not at the airport. Like, it sets you up like it's going to be one of those airport rom-com endings. No, he gets there before with Jim Blossom's Follow You Down playing. I don't know what the connection is there. It just feels like, I like that song here.
Yeah.
I like that song, but it's just like, it's like, why didn't they do a reprise of, like, Keith Urban's Somebody Like You? 'Cause that meant something in the movie. It was there. I did notice the version of that song used in this movie was a very decountrified version of it. They took away the banjo and they put electric guitar of it, took a lot of the twanginess out of it, and tried to make it as just straight soft rock pop as they could, which is interesting.
the song came out before the movie, and then there's 2 music videos to it essentially, but like
Yeah.
the music videos are the same, but just one version has clips from the movie woven in to like him singing out in the desert. So, but Keith Urban is one of my like greatest loves.
We'll talk
And
about that on Friday, folks.
We will.
Friday.
So I'm excited to talk about Keith Urban. But
Yeah.
yeah, that movie and just that scene with that song, it just, the whole thing works in its own twisted sort of way, especially when they first have sex in like the parents' house bathroom, like in the shower. You're like, why does this work? And why am I like tearing up and like misty eyed? Like, this is so awkward.
It was so funny. I was watching. I'm like, that's a parrot. All right. You know what? When it happens, it happens.
Yeah. And it's like, that's the thing is like, I don't know, but from seeing so many rom-coms, at least until the last like 5 minutes of it or so of the movie, I like how kind of in control and strong Kate Hudson's character was. She didn't really like, they allowed a woman to they allowed like that female character to be like unhinged, but like as like she's in on the joke. So it wasn't kind of a trope as much as she was playing, as you said earlier, like she was playing tropes rather than like being what you would expect of like a person in a movie, or like, why would you do that? It's just like, oh, what are you going to do next? So I like that she's actually a stronger character than one would expect or find in a typical rom-com than say like Jennifer Lopez in The Wedding Planner. And I feel like that's the only one I'm referencing, but I do know a lot of them, who is just like this lonely single woman who everybody's like, when are you going to get a man? Nobody's telling Kate Hudson,
no,
when are you going to get a man? Like, this movie doesn't care about any of that. It just
nobody's
happens.
like, I knew that's what you needed, or you needed that all along. It just is something that happened rather than saying that she needed.
And I like that. And if you look at it from that perspective too, I feel like it is one of the stronger rom-coms for women in a weird, twisted sense, despite it still having terrible stereotypes. But it tries really hard to poke those out and say that these aren't actually wrong. And like even Kate Hudson like empowers Michelle, and BB Newirth being like, who will take Michelle's personal life for a story? And then that one woman who's just like, I'll do it. And it's like, no. And she's like, I quote that woman reporter, composer employee all the time when she like says like, oh, the deadly pedicure, although surprisingly upbeat. Like the surprisingly upbeat line, I quote all the time when I like say something like really is devastating, and I'm like, but surprisingly upbeat, and it's because of that movie. And just those little like subtle secondary. I mean, she's not even a secondary character, and I still know that character, and I know her lines, and I'm like, I want to get to know that character even more. Like, what are these articles she's writing about deadly like pedicures and what your gyno won't tell you? Like, how bad is it? And what's a beat? Like, I want to know. Like, she's fun to me. Like, I feel like this show could be explored, or this movie could be explored so much heavier. Yeah. So it's problematic in its own ways. It's whitewashed. It's got its own little issues, but you know, you can dissect it and appreciate parts of it and just enjoy the ride.
It's not asking you to be serious. You shouldn't take it as seriously too. And watching it, I mean, I was like, oh, I miss Kate Hudson. She's not in a lot anymore. And here's the thing, like, while I consider her like kind of like Mark Wahlberg in that I think they gave us their like very best when they first broke out. I don't think she's been bad. I just think that Almost Famous performance is really iconic. It's there. And like his Boogie Nights performance is like, did they like give us like this all-timer thing, and then afterwards, you know, they got to have fun. They go do what they do, and she's having fun, and she's made a great career. But I'm sitting here going like, is she the OO's Meg Ryan, where like 2010 hit and all of a sudden everybody was done with her? Like, because Meg Ryan was everywhere in the 90s, and then 2000 hit. I mean, it's not like she didn't work, but with people, there was no, like, it just immediately when the decade changed, something else. And it's really like Steve Guttenberg, 1989 to 1990, the guy disappeared. And it's just weird, like, really, like, 2010 hits, and just nothing of stature. Like, it is, and she was all over, like,
all over, I
don't understand. People like her.
I know, and I know, I'm trying to think of, like, I mean, I think her interests changed and maybe she got tired of it, but she, like, as I was saying, she's incredibly talented, and given the freedom to improvise, she nails it, and she's engaging. She glows on screen. She has the ease of Goldie Hawn. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Goldie Hawn, though, had like huge movies later on in her career. I mean, not more recently per se, but she
Goldie
had
Hawn
like
only
First
slowed
Wives
up when
Club.
Goldie Hawn wanted to slow up. Like,
Yeah.
God,
Goldie Hawn. Another movie that I was close to choosing for you is House Sitter. I think I mentioned that before, with Goldie Hawn and Steve Martin, which people dismiss as like a generic rom-com, but it is so good. And that movie does something genius that so many movies always fail at, is there's actually no like contrived or unintentional or forced villain in that movie. It's just, the movie just naturally flows with conflict, but the conflict is all believable rather than forced. Oh, that's my biggest issue with How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Now it just reminded me. When they found out about the bet, and I get why they had to do it, and I thought they handled it really well with the Judys, like laying that little seed to the other two friends who were just like, oh, well, like, and, you know, she was in on it the whole time. But like when she freaked out over it, for me, based on everything that's been happening up until that point, it would have been like, oh, now I get why he stayed through all that crap. Yeah. Like it would have, like all these little ding, 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 ding things would have gone off. And Matthew McConaughey would have been like, oh, so the first date Andy really was her, but she did it. Oh, like it just, there wasn't any time for them to allow themselves to have that kind of like, oh my God, we were both in on a bet, like work. Like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe your boss allowed. Like, I think they could have, I mean, yes, I love the You're So Vain song that was unnecessary. And Marvin Hamlish being like, that's not my song.
Yeah, Marvin Hamlish, that's so funny. Like,
but it just, I know why it was in the movie, and it gave us a wonderful, fun scene. And it gave me one of my favorite moments of the movie too, with Mrs. DeLauer being like, oh, this is so fun. Like she's just in the audience having a ball. Like the scene stealer right there is Mrs. DeLauer, who I love. And just her casual, like, isn't she wearing the Isadora diamond? Like, oh no. And they all run out. Like it gave us that tension, but it was unnecessary. Like the way to get to it was unnecessary because both of them crossed lines and now they knew why. And it could have been a moment of like realization. And then I think the conflict could have like, I don't know, where I think the conflict maybe could have like come out of like, maybe she wrote the article, found out after the article, tried to get the article removed, but then the original article got published, and then like Bebe Neuwirth then becomes kind of like the villain, and then it becomes like another situation. Like, I don't know, something that maybe would have like felt more deserved or earned, because that fight just didn't fully feel earned. But again, I think they tried to cover their bases by saying like they're drunk, or at least Kate Hudson was drunk. And when you're drunk, you're not really thinking. And she really genuinely became vulnerable with him. And I think the shock of meeting the family and going, that wasn't real, then kind of like trigger, like if you're already heightened reality of that. I mean, I'm not mad at it. I'm glad we have the scene. It wouldn't have worked without it, but it just, I wish there was just a moment of them talking before a fight broke out or something else got in the way, where they could have been like, oh, this all makes sense. And they had that moment of revelation of like, now I know why everything was so crazy after all. And that's my big thing with the movie, is it just, they needed that moment and it just didn't feel fully earned yet, despite being necessary. So maybe she's just a clunky drunk and wasn't able to think clearly in that moment, but who knows? But that's where I struggle with the movie a little bit. But I appreciate her walking out at the end and quitting her job because she just didn't get she didn't do it. And I mean, was she catering to the guy when he came back to save her, or not save her, like come to the bridge? I don't know. I mean, like, is it the best message of the ending? Like, it could have maybe, I don't know, but I think they genuinely had a connection with the family and it escalated. So I appreciate the ending. I don't think she was sacrificing anything for him. I think she was making decisions for herself, and choosing to be with him isn't her giving up a job opportunity either, because I don't think she knew what she was doing because it happened so quickly. So I think there's issues. People have issues with the ending about like what she's giving up her job to like potential job to go to DC. And it's like, no, she was going to an interview, but like even that they could like figure out. So I don't know. I just think that fight. Yeah. So that's my one thing that I can say about this movie that I struggle with, but I don't know if I could do it differently. Therefore, I approve and I'll allow it.
Gotcha. I have one. I do have a gripe with the movie that is probably it's kind of nitpicky, but let me explain. So for a film with a background that's sort of centered around the NBA Finals,
yes,
and is adapted from a comic book of two sports fans, which I watched the behind the scenes, and one of the behind the scenes, and they were the two women who wrote the comic that's based off. This is a comic book movie, folks. They were at Big Wang's, a place I hung out with. It was down the street from my apartment when I lived in Los Angeles. They're talking about how big sports fans they are, and that's where they go. The film doesn't really seem to know how basketball works, and they have, and like even like McConaughey refers to it as a championship match at one point, and it's the NBA Finals. And on day 9 of their dating, he has, for their day 13, he has tickets to Game 7, which wouldn't have been decided at that point, and tickets wouldn't be available. And then, so they're at a game, and with under 2 minutes left, she's trying to get him to buy the soda. You can't buy concessions once the fourth quarter is started. They're closed. And so my thing is, the reason why I gripe, like, so if the film made Andy a non-sports nut, I could see that it doesn't make sense because the film would take her perspective and wouldn't have to. But they make it a point that she is a big Knicks fan. She's a big sports fan. So me as a writer, you need to research these things, and I understand a film can't completely be beholden to all the rules and 100% tight factually, but flat out ignorantly like providing a falsity for a sense of comedy, like I'm taking out of it and I can't laugh because I'm like, that's not true. Like, but primarily it's the concessions bit here. I get they're trying to fit the NBA Finals into this window. But they don't play. They would have to play the games every other day. They don't. When they travel, they take extra days off. But that's the one thing that bugged me. I don't know. Like, it was just like, lean into. Look, why couldn't it have been like the third quarter, or I don't know? And he gets stuck in line. I don't know. But I was just like, you can't buy concessions at that. It's just a nitpick. So funny. It has no. It's just meant for a scene of comedy. But sometimes I like falsities. Kind of bug me with writing a little bit. But that's it. That's my gripe.
That's really funny. I didn't immediately go to that, but you're right, because even like concerts will do that. They close concessions before, like at least a certain amount of time before the show ends. But I feel like my thing was how fast the games were happening, and there wouldn't be that many home games like in a week. So that was like, that's something I picked up on, but I didn't actually like think about at all, because I found it so adorable how Kate Hudson said thirsty and being parched that I didn't care that he was going to get the drink. So I didn't notice that one. I just did notice going like, in what world are there events happening this frequently that they can go to a Celine Dion concert that's happening at the same time as the basketball game, where there's another basketball game? Like, don't people travel? Like,
and they're showing the game outside of the Celine Dion concert. Like,
which, I mean, I feel like I read an article years ago where somebody was like analyzing the likelihood of it, and like there was at no point would they've had like a concert or like and a basketball game happening simultaneously, and all these little things about that. And I'm like, okay, fine, sure, but yeah, I don't know how they would have gotten out of that one either.
But like, I was like, okay, so this isn't a sports thing. This isn't like sports people. But then when like, they make Kate Hudson's character a big Knicks fan, she sneaks out to watch the game herself, and then I find out the people who created this comic were big sports fans. I wonder if they were like, that's not how basketball works when they saw the adaptation. But it's just an odd thing that it's a little peeve, but I was like, I have to give the movie it, but I'm still like, I'm not laughing as hard because I'm like, well, you can't do, like, he should know that too. Like, if he's like this big Knicks fan and he goes to games, all that, he should be like, you can't.
Yeah.
Or,
And that could have been funny too, where it's like they're closed. It's like, but I'm so thirsty. Like,
Get
found
it
a
for
vending
me.
machine because
and he
like,
has to
there are
hassle the
vending-
guy at the concessions to turn it back on and give him one.
Yeah, or like, yeah, that's true. They could have like,
And
you
then
could have
she
saw somebody
says,
cleaning it up.
It's not diet.
Yeah,
That would have been, there we go. That's in our college version when we write that.
You're absolutely right. If they are still at the concession stand, and if it was somebody cleaning, but it's like he said, but we're closed, and he was like, no, I need this thing, and then just had a quick moment there, and then like throws down like a 20, and it's like, just give me a drink. That you're right. That would have solved that problem, or that like made that at least slightly more realistic, because I think probably if somebody threw $20 at somebody and said, give me a soda, if they were about to close the machine down or close the registers, I guarantee you probably you would find somebody who would be like, just pocket the 20 and give them a drink. Yeah. So good catch. I didn't even think about that one. So goes
It's
to
in
show
my brain.
you.
Don't know why.
Yep. Nope.
But
That's the thing. Yeah. But I did notice the thing about like having tickets for like day 13. And that's the other thing. It's like that fight wouldn't have been necessary because he already said before the date, like before the whole like thing on dates after the family, day 13. So clearly he wasn't caring about the bet when he offered her about the tickets, which means when she found out about the bet, he would have been like, but wait, you want to go to you want to go to the game with me. So why are we fighting? So again, like for movie purposes, they have to do it. Sometimes who knows how they got there, but the journey getting there was fun and delightful and charming. And they like shaded Marvin Hamlish or whatever. Not they gave him shade or whatever.
Oh yeah,
and that was kind of funny.
I would say before we wrap all that whatever up, tying it back in with things. This movie is a big hit. It made over 105 million US, 177 million, almost made 200 million worldwide. On a $50 million budget. It was #1 opening weekend, topping Shanghai Nights, which also was opening that weekend, which was the first movie talked about on this show.
Oh my goodness.
First episode with Scott Mendelson was Shanghai Nights. So like I said, a lot of weird connections here. The next weekend, it was topped by the opening weekend of Daredevil on Valentine's Day weekend. People wanted Elektra and Daredevil over Matthew and Kate, but they saw them the previous weekend. But it still made bank the second weekend too. I mean, it got me to the theaters twice. So high schooler me being like, I'm going to see this. But I did see Shanghai Nights in theaters as well. So, which that's a very interesting movie selection for your very first one. It was, there was an inside baseball reason for it with my guest.
That's so funny. Well, and here we are like, talking about the movie that wiped that one out of the box office. But yeah, and like that's the thing is like I don't know if this is even maybe my like would say this is my favorite rom-com. It's up there, but I don't know if I put this as a rom-com or just as a comedy.
Right.
But it is in one of my like kind of favorite movies. But there's so many rom-coms that I do love. But like the more I think about it is like what defines a favorite movie. Or is it just one that you can just feel comforted when you watch, that you know really well? And this is just one that like, even when I put it on the other day, I didn't want to do other things. Like it's not a background noise movie for me, even having seen it 20 something times. I just think it's just so charming that, and even when I get frustrated with it, I'm just like, oh, you guys, like you are hanging out with friends going like, oh my God, you're driving me crazy right now. But well, that's just part of life.
And one of the reasons we connected on this one as a pick was because when I met, I don't know if it's still the case. I don't know, but I don't know if it's still the case. But when I met my wife, this was her favorite movie, like ever, was this movie. And we watched it in preparation for the show. We started it rather late at night, but guess what? She normally falls asleep to like everything. She was up whole way through of all this. I don't know if it's her favorite, like probably still is. She's huge. Matthew McConaughey's her fave. And like, but this movie, she loves this movie, and she has watched in recent years. Trainwreck's been on regular viewing for her as well, which is a terrific one in my opinion, from recent years. But so this one, and I've come to appreciate like not all, like there are game-changing rom-coms, and we know that like
Yes.
Annie Hall, When Harry
Yep.
Met Sally, like Philadelphia Story, going back Cary Grant, stuff like that. But like, or Screwball, yeah, but like not all of them have to be that. There's the ones that
Yep.
come after, the ones that want to be that or just need to get some elements of that, and they're fine too. They're fun. They can be silly. If you can have it, if you can have Halloween and you can have like Happy Birthday to Me, you can have Annie Hall and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. You can have all that. The romantic comedy subgenre of comedy can have its own things. You just have to open your mind, actually watch these fucking movies and find what they're good at, see what to enjoy them by. Like that's part of the problem, is watching them with the open mind and just enjoying them as comedy for one. Fuck romance, they can be just funny too. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think this has more appeal for rom-coms, or has broader appeal for rom-coms because of its self-awareness than, say, A Maid in Manhattan, A Wedding Planner, A Monster-in-Law. I know I just listed a bunch of J-Lo movies, but I love all those.
She's one of the kings. Like,
she really,
yeah.
But I think the 2000s, there was like a resurgence of the rom-com, but it was styled in this kind of glossy, candy-coated shell. Like, even if you look at this movie and like the iconic yellow dress of her, like there's something to me that just screams, if you look at all the posters from rom-coms from like the early 2000s, they're all like pastel-y and just very airy and light feeling, versus like when you get into the 90s, you have a little bit of edge, or like kind of late 80s, early 90s, where you have like kind of the takeover of Pretty Woman and kind of the rise of Julia Roberts and Mystic Pizza, which before that, and then Pretty Woman, and like her kind of stint into more of these softer rom-coms. Like there was like, she did a style of, I recently was on a Julia Roberts kick too, and watched like all of like her Mystic Pizza, Notting Hill, and everything, and she has kind of like, those movies are like softer and more subdued. And then you get into the 2000s when you start getting more physical comedy, or like women being less kind of perfect, even though they still are, like they try to play that relatable, like we're quirky, like generic thing, because you see that when Julia Roberts and Richard Gere reunited for Runaway Bride, again, one of those like fluffy rom-com movies, but it's still very bright, shiny, and it just kind of, so there's a feel to like the 2000s rom-coms, which is very different than the 90s rom-coms, which is different than the 80s rom-coms. So I don't think that, I think I didn't even think about Trainwreck, but that's a modern day rom-com, and it has almost a more of an indie feel to it, despite still being considered a major motion picture.
Right.
It just we're shifting styles of the rom-com, and they're trying to now showcase, like early 2000s, it was like relatable because it was more stronger, career-oriented women. And then I guess in more modern times, you have like Trainwreck, where it's more body positivity and not just kind of this cookie cutter shape or expectation of looks. Because Trainwreck kind of, I mean, Amy Schumer played into that whole thing. So it's interesting to see the evolution of rom-coms, and I think men are dismissive to them, but they also, I think, lump rom-coms with just general romance movies too.
Or these aren't aimed at me, so I shouldn't watch them. Like, they're just aimed at audiences. Like, I mean, my thing is, I like to see filmmakers do their thing, and I like to see actors do their thing. I don't care the genre or whatever. They're good at like there's a lot of people that don't realize there's a lot of movies they would like because they like from a certain director, but they haven't seen that. I'm like, did you know they directed that? Oh, they did? Try it, because that guy's making stuff you like. He might make the rom-com you like, or the one that unlocks the door to go back and appreciate the ones you didn't realize you appreciated before. Like, it's a whole thing. Like, films are like, I just see film as not like I'm trying to be some like genius Matrix ones and zeros person, but like there's a lot of, all the genres have through lines. They have similarities. There's things like, if you understand their limitations, what they do, the rule, like, they can be enjoyable on any level. The one thing I just have a hardest time getting into is anime, and I've tried a billion times, and I want to have that door unlocked. I just haven't been able to successfully do it. Like, there's still ones to do, but movies are movies. Like, I don't get these people throwing themselves into a corner. I mean, that's why I'm called the Brandon Peters Show and not like Brandon's Scary Thing. Like, I don't want to be painted in a horror corner anymore. I don't want to be in the cult movie corner. I want to talk about How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Yeah.
On here, I know you're like, does that fit your show? I'm like, anything fits my show because I watch all the things. I have thoughts on all the, like, I like doing that. I love that my show goes to this place right here. Like, this is wonderful. And it's not just a gift to my wife to talk about one of her favorite movies, but like, I really enjoyed getting and then watching it this time with that lens. Like, I have to talk about this movie, or I have to write about this movie. I see it differently. And then I appreciate the film more when I do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like, I'm like, it's so hard for me. I love all styles of movies. Yeah. And I mean, clearly how excited I got over How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And I could still talk more about it, but I'm sure your listeners are probably like over it. You can DM me if you want more about this movie. but like, that's the thing is like, I also just spent like a week rewatching all the Saw movies. Like I can go through any genre movie and I'm not just this like guy who just wants to sit and watch a rom-com, but then I'll go from watching all the Saw movies to all the worst like horror movies. I love a good horror movie and can get just as excited about those, or watch all these Lifetime movies and being like, what's next? Like, I don't know. Like, I'll take every movie for what they are without prejudging it. I'll let people like what they like and not really like nix it. And I'll just continue to be excited about random movies like Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead or How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days and more.
All right. Matthew and Kate would return in 2008 with Fool's Gold, which effectively ended their potential dominance as a rom-com power couple. So.
I mean, saw that. It was charming in its own way.
I'll have to revisit it. I saw it back then. I have it on Blu-ray, but have not. What else? This is where we just talk about something else we might have taken in, put out in the world, whatnot. So, Greg, what else?
Oh my goodness. What else? Since last time, I've been writing more, which is good because I've been kind of like uninspired, and I have 3 kind of children's book stories in the works that I'm actually excited about. And one of them is a really fun idea, and it's a big departure from my other stuff. It's more of just like a fun story without a lot of subtext and heaviness like I think some of my other children's books have. So I've been trying to like write more and trying to finally get back into screenwriting again because I wrote a rom-com that actually did sell. It hasn't been made yet, but it did sell. So I'm trying. I've been kind of disillusioned because producer notes and just the whole process of just navigating that was so exhausting that I kind of stopped wanting to write for a little while, but now I'm kind of getting excited about potentially, reviving the rom-com tradition and working on another one.
I've worked on a couple rom-com scripts myself, so.
Oh,
I did.
So there we.
Yeah.
Let's see. So you
I'm
do.
no stranger to, even though they weren't my thing when I was writing them, I was trying to write them. So.
That's fun. So, well then, off camera, we should talk more about that too. Gotcha. Because I've been through the whole process. And like I said, it's sold and supposedly in the stages to get made. But like now because it's sold to a network, everything's out of my control and I'm a newbie to all that. So I'm like, yay, I did a movie. But then but otherwise just watching stuff, as I mentioned earlier, big Lifetime kick of these nightmare movies. Y'all have to check them out. But I just discovered a show. And for all you listeners out there, this show just blew my mind open that I did not know it existed. It's a CW show of all things from 2012. Oh, no clue it existed. Only 19 episodes. Devastated it's over. It's called the LA Complex.
I've heard of that.
It was a Canadian show that then the CW started airing. I blew through that show in like 3 days because I was like, I just don't want to sleep anymore. I just need to get through it. It is all the fluff and like kind of contrived, like heightened stuff of a CW show that you would expect. So if you like those, but this one was ahead of its time and one of the most accurate reflections, even in its absurdity, of people trying to make it in Hollywood. Never have I seen something like better. It is, but it's still like outlandish and absurd. But also this show does something that blew my mind that was on the CW, but had very much intense gay black sex.
Oh, wow.
Like as a through line, like I'm sitting there going, before Empire did that.
Yeah.
the LA complex had a very intense, dark, heavy storyline of a black hip hop singer and his suppressed gayness and him trying to deal with life and love and make out scenes and just ripping off clothes. And I'm just sitting going, this is 2012.
Wow.
So the
world was different back then.
I mean, it blew my mind, but a Canadian show that just, I don't think it was well advertised. I don't know what happened to it, but I devastated it's over. The wrap up was fine. I don't think they knew they were ending, but it kind of maybe sensed they were. So they left it open for more, but still gave me enough to feel like, okay, I can fill in the gaps if I need to, but it's really fascinating. So if you like those fluffy CW shows, this is 20. And I think the reason why maybe it didn't pick up as much is because it's like 20 somethings, which is not common for the CW. Usually they start in high school. This is all people who are out of high school, out of college, and trying to be performers or producers or writers or whatever in Hollywood. So it's a little different, but still in that veneer of a 90210 Melrose Place. They all live in like an apartment complex together, or as they call it, a long-term motel. So none of it's believable in the like kind of overall setup of like how they're living together, but the conversations they have and how cutthroat they are about Hollywood, very real. So check it out.
It's on the CW seed or?
It's on Amazon. You can watch it on Amazon. All of it on Amazon. Amazon. That's why I don't know how. I discovered it by reading a BuzzFeed article of like shows canceled too soon, and most of them I was like, don't care. And then for some reason, this one I was like, this looks terrible, but why not? And give it a couple episodes. Give it a couple episodes.
It's I love like when Hollywood stuff actually gets it like right about the lifestyle there. Like,
I mean, again, they get it right because they show people struggling. What they get wrong that people will struggle with is how quickly or not quickly things happen. Just because you're just like, wait, this is all happening in a week. Like, that's not necessarily believable. But again, for the purpose of the show, you have to just say like, okay, what's happening is potentially true that can happen, but maybe how quickly it happened or how it got to that point, maybe it was a little bit like forced just to make sure they got this result. Just like the basketball game and the getting the soda. It just, you go like, is that really right? But they weren't trying to like say you can buy buy a soda, then they're trying to just get her the drink. So in this one, they're just trying to get stuff. And once they get it, then the scene develops, but maybe getting there is a little like iffy on Hollywood. But just the way they treat casting directors, some of the harshness of it, and some of the scenarios that they place these characters in, maybe not really believable as quickly as it happened, but I don't know. I just really was fascinated by it. I just suspension of disbelief and allowed myself to just say, sure, we're in this world, we're going with it. But I knew these characters. I've worked with these people. I'm friends with these characters. I get it. And some of the choices that they made, I'm like, that's believable. And if people watch it and they go, that's not believable, then I will give them a real life scenario to pretty much everything that I saw there on why it was believable, or at least how it happened to me or how I experienced it. So at least I can say it was believable in my frame of reference and my background, especially when I was acting more.
I love it. You know what one surprised me was actually like really almost true to life. It was Swingers. Back in I lived off that movie growing up and stuff, and I moved out to Los Angeles and like lived that, like not intentionally, but I was like, wow, that is like, people might think, oh, it's that funny movie, you know, Your Money Baby, all that. Like, that's some accurate depictions of shit in that movie, like really, really strongly accurate. I'm shocked by that till this day. But I definitely want to check this out. Like, I knew about it, but I never watched it. What else? You teased it earlier, but it's Hacks. Like, I finally got it from, I know my listeners probably hate me, like, and I swear I'm not paid by them, but HBO Max, I swear, is the best of the streamers.
I'm right there with you. I do agree with that.
Shows are great. The vault is great. The movies are great. Like, and right now where they have the day in the theater window thing, like, I can't like, Netflix has a bunch of shit. Like, HBO Max has like stuff, like real things, and the best garbage is on Amazon. So you're not even getting that Netflix. So
yeah.
But Hacks is great. It's Gene Smart. Just Vegas, like we talk about, like
Yep.
stuff about Hollywood. Vegas has a rich history too, and I don't think they tap into it as much as Hollywood with these shows and stuff. But this one's really got that kind of itch of showing, show business stuff and like has been like fading out, things like that. And it's rude and it's blunt and it's suspenseful and stuff. So I'm been really enjoying that show, and it's in that nice wheelhouse of these like The Flight Attendant, where it's like 25 to 30 minutes, and they
Loved that too.
They nail the drama, they nail the comedy, and it's like there's no bullshit, and it doesn't feel like they were like short on anything. Like it's not like super tight. It breathes, it does everything, and they're not just it's a drama, so it has to be an hour. No, and it's working. Like there's other shows on HBO Max. HBO Max has been doing that too. Like these like 25-minute things, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love The Flight Attendant, and I'm loving
Love
Hacks.
that.
Like there's a sweet spot being hit with these like 25 to 30-minute dramedies that the Made for Love was only like 25, 30 minutes when they did those too. So
Yep. Those, but I mean, I liked Mare of Easttown too. So that's
I
like
still haven't started that one yet. I need to.
Okay.
But
it's good. It's a slow burn, kind of like The Undoing. But like I feel like, but it's 7 episodes. So I mean, HBO I feel like has so much more freedom to just going to do a show as they see fit, because even Hacks, they still release 2 episodes a night. So it makes it feel like you're watching an hour because it's hard to like not watch both simultaneously.
Right.
So it's like, but they give you the option to split it up into segments in a sense. So I don't know, but I
well, and
support
HBO
that.
never changed. All the other landscapes changed. They all do these streamers, and HBO is still just making their shows. Like they're actual, like Succession. Have you watched Succession?
Yep.
It's one of the best shows ever. And here's the thing. Those are like episodes, actual television. They're not just like some big part of a 12. Like you could literally walk into like episode 3, season 1 of Succession and just go, you know what, this is pretty good. I'll keep watching this, and then not go like and feel fine. Like it's not based upon you binging a show over a weekend. They actually, or a season, they actually just make these good. They're part of a bigger arc, but the episodes actually have beginning, middles, and ends, rather than just feeling like a bunch of bridges. And it's all about where's it end. Like actually enjoy the ride of the show, enjoy watching these characters build, and that's what the HBO shows do that Netflix's, the Amazons and stuff aren't doing. It's just like, I get the intensity that doing these R-rated things on TV and making them like movies is something, but movies get cut down to 2.5 hours, hour 40 minutes for a reason, and not just extended. But yeah, HBO Max, Hacks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I support that, and I watched all of it. And there's more episodes that came out. Today.
Yeah. As we record.
So, So that's exciting. But again, LA Complex is not an HBO type of thing. No. It is a very CW. Go in with a CW lens, because
there we go.
Like it's not the same. It does not character develop in the same way, but it's still a fun ride if you like CW stuff. Ahead of its time. Anyway. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, that'll wrap us up for today, Greg. Thank you for your glorious return to the show.
Thank you.
Even more fun than last time. Like, I appreciate it. Before we nod off for today, let people know where best to follow you and keep up with your work.
As usual, you can follow me Instagram at the McGoonies, the McGoonies, McGoonies. And that's the same for Twitter and Facebook, but I don't really use those as much because they all give me anxiety. So Instagram is the best way to reach me. And you can message me about any of my like things about these movies that I've said, or if you disagree, feel free to let me know and why. Always curious. And or you can go to my website and email me. Anyway, I'm available.
All right. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD, written work at whysoblue.com. There's more for the Brandon Peters Show this week, but until then, always remember to keep the positivity in your online film chatter.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.
Oh, no.
Please. Are we playing?
Oh no. Our love fern! It's dead!
No, honey, it's just sleeping.
You let it die! You gonna let us die? You should think about that.
The hell's a love fern?